dear students. Welcome to another fun-filled learning session as we continue our Science 10 class. I hope you are doing fine and staying healthy. I'm Teacher Clarice and we will be discussing Quarter 4, Week 3, Biomolecule, Carbohydrates, and Lipids. So gather up your things, your science module, your science notebook, and your ball pen. And be sure you are in a safe and quiet place. Let us have fun exploring new lessons. Before we start our lesson, let's pray together. Dear Lord and Father of all, as we start this new day for new learning, we ask for your guidance. Lead us all the way. May you let us see through your eyes, listen through your ears, and speak with your mouth. Be with us as we explore the world. Give us the heart to love and be kind to one another. Amen. This module will help you recognize the major categories of biomolecules such as carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Okay, so specifically at the end of the session, you should be able to do the following. Number 1, describe biomolecules and identify the different elements present in it. Number 2, describe carbohydrates and its classification. Number 3, describe lipids and differentiate the two classes of lipids. And number 4, recommend ways how to manage health issues, trends, and concerns, specifically choosing what to eat through different literary pieces. Okay? So, let's unlock the different terms that we will be using in this lesson. So, we have here the different science words for the day. So, we have biomolecule, carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids, saccharides, and fatty acids. Okay, so let's start with biomolecule. Okay, so a biomolecule is a chemical compound found in all living organisms. So these chemicals that are composed of mainly carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus are the building blocks of life and perform important functions in living organisms. Okay, so next we have the term carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are organic compounds that serve as the main energy source in all living organisms. Okay, and then we have lipids. Lipids are organic substances that includes fat and fat-like substances such as the phospholipids, waxes, steroids, and others. Okay, so next will be proteins. Proteins are the most abundant organic compounds found in any living things, responsible for as much as 15% of body's dry weight. Okay, and then you have the lipids or nucleic acids. Nucleic acids are organic compounds that function for the storage of genetic information which is transmitted from one generation to the next in all living organisms. So remember our topic in DNA and RNA. Okay? And then we have also the term saccharide. Okay, so a saccharide is the unit structure of carbohydrates. So, meaning, yung building blocks of carbohydrates are saccharides. Okay, and then last science word for the day is fatty acids. So, fatty acids are the building blocks of fat in our bodies and in the food that we eat. Okay, so those are the words that we will be using in our lessons or session for today. Okay, so let's recall the different lessons involving biomolecules in our science, lower science level. Okay, or lower level science. So we have here, we need to classify food. So you need to examine the pictures and classify them to their respective group. So I will be showing you pictures. So may papakita kong pictures. Classify nyo lang sila in their different respective group. Okay? So I know you have lots of topics involved in food, especially in TLE or in health subject. Okay? So these are the samples of the food, and then you need to classify them into carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and then you have the nucleic acid. Okay? So I will give you 20 seconds to examine the pictures and then write your answer in your science notebook. Okay? Ready? Start. Okay, very good. So let's answer and classify the foods into the different categories. So we have carbohydrates and lipids here. So for carbohydrates, we have boiled potatoes, pasta, rice, noodles, and bread. So those are the examples of carbohydrates. And then for lipids, we have butter, olive oil, fatty fish, and nuts and seeds. Okay. For proteins and nucleic acid, we have beans, meat, and fish, eggs, cheese, nuts and seeds, and peanut butter for proteins. And then for nucleic acids, we have our RNA and DNA. Okay, so very good, guys, in classifying the different samples of food into the 4 major categories of biomolecules. Okay, so let's again describe what is biomolecule. Biomolecule are also called biological molecule. So any numerous substances that are produced by cells and living organisms. So remember, organisms are composed of different types of molecules. So they also depend on these molecules for growth and survival. So these molecules are referred to as biomolecules. So we have 4 major classifications. So we have carbohydrates, we have lipids, we have proteins, and then, of course, we have the nucleic acid. So each classification of biomolecules serve as a specific function in our body. So they are also involved in homeostatic and metabolic process in all living organisms. Okay, so let's try answering this one. What makes up biomolecules? Okay, so we have here a table. You need to copy the table on your science notebook. So, copyhin niyo yung table. So, you need to complete the table by identifying the elements in biomolecules and identify the elements present in them. And then, the first item, so you have here the example, is done for you. Okay? Para guide kung ano yung gagawin natin for the next biomolecule. Okay? So we have here, our biomolecule example is proteins. So the molecular structure is given. So given na yung molecular structure you have there, ang sasagutan nyo na lang is the elements present. So saan tayo titingin? On the molecular structure and then the characteristic of biomolecule. Okay? Or the description of biomolecule. Of that biomolecule. Okay, so for example, we have their proteins. So elements present in proteins or in protein are, we have carbon, we have also hydrogen, and then we also have the oxygen. So as you can see on the structure of, or the molecular structure of proteins. Okay, and then for the characteristic, proteins are energy-giving molecules. Okay, so ganyan na yung gagawin natin on this activity. Okay, so let's answer carbohydrates, and lipids. So you have there, given yung molecular structure ni carbohydrates and lipids, all you need to do is to answer the element present and then the characteristic of that molecule. Okay, so I will give you 20 seconds to copy the table and then write your answer in your science notebook. Okay? Okay, very good. So let's describe carbohydrates and lipids. So carbohydrates are organic compounds that serve as the main energy source or the main source of energy in all organisms. Okay? So carbohydrates are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen molecules. So those are the elements present in carbohydrates. Okay, so the proportion of hydrogen to carbon and oxygen atoms is 2 is to 1. Okay? And okay, so next will be lipids. So lipids are organic substances that include fats and fat-like substances such as phospholipids, waxes, steroids, and others. So lipids are generally hydrophobic substances and insoluble in water. So the elements present in lipids are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. But they contain less oxygen in proportion to hydrogen. Okay, so the job of lipids are for storing of energy for later use. Okay? Okay, so let's have this another activity. Okay, so write again your answer in your notebook. So this activity will be divided into two, part A and part B. So part A, we need to have, let's classify carbohydrates. Okay, so in this part A, you have here a concept map. And then you have here the information bank. So ang gagawin lang natin is to fill in the concept map and then refer your answer on the information bank. Okay, so you have their carbohydrates, then monosaccharide, disaccharide, and then we have the polysaccharide. So remember, saccharides. Dun kanina sa science word natin for the day. Okay, so you will choose, pipiliin nyo yung sagot ninyo on our information bank. Okay? So you have there the number of sugar. So pili lang kayo kung 1, 2, 3. And then we have the description, you have there, and then we have the examples. Okay? For part B naman ng ating activity, it is entitled, What Am I? So you have to solve the riddles. And then you need also to refer your answer in the information bank. So you have here 7 riddles. So 7 lahat yan. Read the riddles and then refer your answer in our information bank. Okay, so I will give you 30 seconds to copy the concept map and then read the riddles and then answer on your science notebook. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so very good, guys. Let's try to answer our activity. So first we have part A. Let's classify a carbohydrate. So we have here a concept map again. So carbohydrates, and then we have D, monosaccharides, disaccharide, and then we have polysaccharide. Okay, so for number of sugars, so monosaccharides have 1, disaccharides 2, and then polysaccharides is 3. Okay, so if that is your answer, very good. Okay, and then next we have the description. So monosaccharides, simplest form of carbohydrates, while disaccharides possess 12 carbon atoms, and then polysaccharides are the most complex form of carbohydrates. Okay? And then lastly, we have the examples. So examples of monosaccharides, glucose and galactose. And then for disaccharides, we have maltose and sucrose. And then for the third one, we have cellulose and glycogen. So if that is your answer, very good, guys. And then, okay, so for our part B of activity, the riddles. So these are the answers. Number 1, I can be found in tissues of animals but not in plants. I add strength to plasma membrane of animal cells. Okay, the answer is phospholipids. Okay, for number 2, I am known as a blood fats which circulate in your bloodstream along with cholesterol. Answer is triglycerides. Okay, and then for number 3, I am solid at room temperature. I am like lard, margarine, and butter. Answer is saturated fats. Number 4, I am an organic substance that includes fats and fat-like substance. Okay, so the answer is lipids. And for number 5, I can be found mostly in plants like corn and become corn oil. So answer is unsaturated fats. And number 6, I am a lipid with a carbon of 4 infused or 4 fused rings. That will be steroids. And last, we have number 7, I am an important component for many organisms because I act as a covering for plants and animals. The answer is waxes. Okay, so very good, guys, for answering our activity. So before we discuss the groups of carbohydrates and examples of lipids, be sure that you are on safe and comfortable place with your science notebook and ball pen to take note important information. So, siguraduhin na ikaw ay nasa safe, ligtas at tahimik na lugar kasi we will now have our discussions. Okay? So, carbohydrates have 3 main groups. We have the monosaccharides, disaccharides, and then we have the polysaccharides. So monosaccharides, from the word mono, meaning only one. Okay, so remember the term saccharide at the beginning of this session. So saccharide is the unit or the building blocks of carbohydrates. Okay, so nilagyan natin siya ng mono, yung saccharides, mono means one. So monosaccharides are simple sugars with only one sugar unit. Okay, for disaccharides naman, di means two. So, they are complex sugars made up of 2 molecules of monosaccharides chemically joined together. So, meaning, monosaccharide plus 1 monosaccharides, pag pinag-combine mo sila, you will now be forming disaccharide. Okay? And then for polysaccharide, poly means many. They are complex sugars made up of chains and or branches of monosaccharides. So meaning, marami ng monosaccharides forming a chain or branches. So those are polysaccharides. Okay, so let's discuss the different examples of the 3 main groups of carbohydrates. So we have first the monosaccharides or the simple sugar. Okay, so the most common monosaccharides are made up of 6 carbon atoms. Okay, so you have there examples of the chemical formula C6. C6 meaning 6 carbon ang contain niya? H12, 12 hydrogen, and we have O6 or 6 oxygen. So we have examples, glucose or called the dextrose or blood sugar. We also have the fructose or the corn sugar. And then we have the galactose. So those are examples of monosaccharides. So glucose is an indispensable component of the mammalian blood and is found at least in small quantities in all animals. While fructose is commonly found in plants but is rarely found in animals. Okay, then fructose also is the sweetest known sugar found in fruits such as ripe mangoes, melon, and atis. I know, alam nyo kung ano yung atis. Okay? While galactose is found in dairy products like avocados, sugar beets, and other gums. Okay, so these simple sugars are used as the building blocks in the formation of complex sugars such as what we said earlier, disaccharides and polysaccharides. Okay, so next for disaccharides naman. Okay, so the chemical formula for disaccharides is C12H22O11. So take note, kung nakita nyo kanina sa monosaccharides, we have C6. Dito naman sa disaccharides, ang sample ng chemical formula is C12. So meaning, dalawang C or 6 or dalawang monosaccharides combined. Okay, forming now your disaccharides. Okay, so the chemical process whereby two monosaccharides are joined together to form disaccharides with the loss of water molecule is called the condensation process or dehydration synthesis. Okay, so let's have examples of disaccharides. So we have sucrose. Okay, so sucrose is the common table sugar, yung ginagamit natin sa bahay natin. Okay? So, it is a chemical combination between the glucose and fructose. So, pag kinumbine mo yung glucose and fructose, you will be having sucrose. Okay? Next is maltose, okay, or malt sugar. So, it occurs in malted cereals and sprouting grains. So, it is made up of two glucose molecules. It is obtained from starchy foods such as potatoes and corn. And it is also produced when two glucose, so dalawang glucose naman to na combine to form your maltose or malt sugar. And last, we have the lactose. Okay, so lactose or milk sugar is the principal carbohydrates in milk. So yung iniinom nyong gatas, the principal carbohydrate present is the lactose or the milk sugar. So it is composed of molecules of galactose and glucose. So, yun naman yung kinumbine to form a lactose. Okay? So, we have glucose and galactose. So, a disaccharide can be broken down into simple sugars by heating it with acids or treating it with suitable enzymes. So, yung double sugars natin can be broken down into the mono ones. Okay? And then, last, we have the polysaccharides. Okay, so the basic formula for polysaccharides is C6H10O5. And then we have the letter N. Kasi nga, it is composed of many monosaccharides, chains or branches of monosaccharides. So, yung letter N dyan refers to the number of monosaccharides present. So, pwede siya maging 10, pwede siya maging 5, pwede siya maging 11, 20, so on and so forth. So, polysaccharides are capable of acting as storage. So, anong ini-store po doon ng mga polysaccharides? The energy. So, they stores energy or structural. Pwede din siyang capable of structural, meaning parts of the cell structure. Okay, so we have here examples of polysaccharides. So, first, we have the starch. Starch is a plant storage carbohydrate that is composed entirely of glucose molecules. So, ibig sabihin, this starch is composed of chains of glucose. Okay? So, it is soft, white, and tasteless powder that is soluble in warm water but insoluble in cold water. So, it consists of long chains of glucose unit. So, a starch molecule can contain many as 200 glucose. So, imagine, ilan yun? Ang haba ng chains na yun na mafo-form ng 200 glucose molecules. Okay, so it is commonly found, yung starch natin sa potatoes, potato tubers, cassava, carrot, corn, peas, pasta, and cereals. Okay, so it is the main component of our flour. Okay, so bakit tayo ng flour? So the main component dun is the starch. Okay, so next example is the cellulose. Okay, so cellulose is the most abundant organic compound on Earth. Bakit? Kasi they can be found in the cell wall of plant cells. So, ibig sabihin, all plants na may, that contains plant cell, okay, so they have cellulose. It is a highly structural, insoluble carbohydrates that functions for support and protection of plant cells. So it is also made up of long chains of glucose, just like starch. Okay? Okay, so next will be glycogen. So glycogen is also known as the animal starch, is another polysaccharide made up of glucose units. So it has more complex branch structure compared to starch and cellulose. So glucose is stored in the liver and muscle. So it serves as a reservoir of the readily available glucose that is released from the liver when the glucose level in the blood becomes low. So, meaning, kung bumababa ang glucose level in your blood, the liver will release glucose. Okay? And then, last polysaccharide is the chitin. Okay? So, chitin is another structural polysaccharides made up of glucose units. So, makikita to sa mga coverings of crustaceans and insects. It has a protective and supportive function. Okay, so because of its complex structure, chitin is very rigid and inflexible. So it is highly insoluble and does not expand in water, making animals with chitin able to survive in aquatic environment. Yan yung. So makita siya or present siya sa ating mga crustaceans and insects. Okay, so next will be the lipids. Okay, so functions of lipids in our body are the following. So it is a source and storage of energy. It is also an essential part of cell structures such as our cell membranes. an insulating material to prevent heat loss and protection against extreme cold. And last function is solvent for fat-soluble vitamins and hormones. So these are the examples of lipids. First, we have the fatty acids. So we have two types of fatty acids, saturated fatty acids and the other is unsaturated fatty acids. So saturated fatty acids are solid at room temperature. Remember solid siya sa room temperature. They are mostly found in animals. Okay, yung lard, margarine, butter are examples of saturated fatty acids. Yung unsaturated fatty acids naman occur in liquid. Kanina, yung saturated is solid at room temperature. Yung unsaturated naman is liquid at room temperature. So, ito, saturated makikita sa animals, pero yung unsaturated makikita most in plants. Okay? So, examples natin yung mga vegetable oil, corn oil. So, unsaturated fats are believed to be healthier sources of fats compared sa saturated fatty acids. Okay? So, mas healthier siya compared sa saturated. Okay? So, next we have phospholipids. Okay, so phospholipids are important component of cell membranes. Okay, so remember, cell membrane is the one that protects the cell, controls the materials that coming in and out of our cell. So, important component siya ng ating cell membrane. So, fatty acid components are hydrophobic while the phosphate group is hydrophilic. So, they are made up of 2 fatty acid molecules and 1 phosphate group. Okay, so that is phospholipids. Next, we have waxes. Okay, so waxes are lipids which are important components for many organisms, such as the cuticle covering the surface of leaves and stems of plants, and then protective covering on the skin and fur of some animals. Okay, so makikita nyo yan, yung mga waxes as a protective covering for plants. Okay, next we have steroids. Okay, so steroids are lipids with a carbon skeleton of 4 fused rings. So cholesterol, bile salts, sex hormones, and vitamins D are examples of steroids. Okay, so cholesterol adds strength to the plasma membrane of animal cells and serves as a precursor of the information of other steroids. So, our liver, yung liver natin, produces cholesterol that we need. We can get additional cholesterol by consuming meat products, poultry, eggs, and dairy products. Pero, in moderation lang. Hindi dapat susobra yung cholesterol. Okay? And then, last, we have the triglycerides, okay, or also known as the blood fats. Okay, so it circulates in our bloodstream along with cholesterol. So we get triglycerides from the food such as meat, plant oil, as well as our body make its own. Just like cholesterol, we need just the right. Take note the right amount of triglycerides. Dapat yung tamang amount lang ng triglycerides. Hindi pwedeng sosobra tayo dun. Okay? Sa kailangan lang natin. Kasi, too much of it, too much triglycerides can increase the risk of heart and blood vessel disease. Tandaan intake of triglycerides. So as you can see on the illustration, we have different examples of foods high in triglycerides. So yan yung mga examples ng mga pagkain na merong or mataas sa triglycerides. Kaya, kailangan kumain tayo ng right amount of food para hindi tayo magkaroon ng risk of heart and blood vessel disease. Okay? So those are the samples and the groups of carbohydrates and lipids. So, katulad nga ng sinabi natin on the first part, we will be focusing mainly on carbohydrates and lipids. Proteins and nucleic acid will be discussed on the other modules. Okay? So, let's have this. Let's explain. Let's try our metacognition. So, our directions, you need to complete the statement on the things you learned about lipids and carbohydrates. So, you have their pattern. Ang gagawin lang natin is dudugtungan natin. Okay? So, now I know about dugtong, first, second, finally, and now you know what I know about. Okay? So, dudugtungan nyo lang yan, sentences na yan, on the things that you learned from lipids and carbohydrates. Okay? So, I will give you 20 seconds to copy the metacognition or the template. Okay, very good. So for our application of the topics we have learned about biomolecules, carbohydrates, and lipids, so we will have our group activity. Okay, remember, we have groups in our sections. So may mga groups naman kada sections and you know who is or are your members. Okay, so for application, we have managing health issues. So as one of the competencies in MAPE, I know you have this one as part of your learning competencies. You need to recommend ways of managing health issues, trends, and concern. So ang gagawin natin, you will be making recommendation on ways on how to manage health issues, trends, and concerns. Specifically in choosing what to eat, through different literary piece. Okay, so the output will be based on our groupings in class. Okay, so ito yung gagawin natin by group. Okay, so take note nyo ha. For group 1 and 2, you will make a recommendation through poster. Okay, for groups 3 and 4, we have through a jingle. Gagawa kayo ng jingle. Okay, for group 5, through a slogan. Okay, so brainstorm among your group kung paano nyo siya i-represent yung recommendation nyo on how to manage those health issues, trends, and then concern. And then choose 1 or 2 among your groups to explain yung ginawa ninyong poster or slogan or yung kakanta or magpe-present ng inyong jingle. Okay? So, I will tell you later kung saan isasubmit at kung kailan isasubmit. Okay? So, these are the rubrics for scoring. Yan. So, ito naman ay ipapasa ko sa ating messenger so that you can view how your work or output will be scored. Kung paano natin siya i-score. Okay? So, don't worry, kahit ano pa yung magiging, ano yung naka-assign sa inyo, you will still have same scoring or rating doon. Okay? So, for last part, so you need to read the selections and answer the following. So let me read. Since food is always part of our lives, it is important that we know the nutrients found in the food that we eat. So, for example, Rio, Jenica, Janice, and Arian are all marathon runners. So, alam niyo naman yung marathon, yung tumatakbo. Okay? Their coaches always let them eat sumptuous meal before the race. So, ibig sabihin, pinapakain sila. na masarap na pagkain bago mag-race? Okay, ito ang questions natin. Why do marathon runners eat a meal rich in carbohydrates the day before the race? So, bakit daw yung mga marathon o yung mga runners kumakain ng pagkain na mayaman sa carbohydrates bago yung kanilang race o yung kanilang competition? What are the foods that Rio, Jenica, and Janice and Marian should take? So, ano dapat daw yung kainin nila para mag-improve yung kanilang performance? Okay? So, this is only for your extended activity. Okay? So, for our evaluate or assessment, so Google form link will be sent na lang sa ating mga respective messenger group chat. So this is the link. Send ko na lang yan sa group chat natin so that you can access the Google link. Okay? And, okay, so the deadline, okay. So you can pass all your works from the very beginning ng mga activities natin since ang sabi natin you need to write your answer on your science notebook. So you can pass all your works through Messenger, through PM or direct message sa Messenger natin or in our Google Classroom katulad ng iba na we are having Google Classroom. Okay? And remember, every Friday naman yung deadline ng ating output. So, you still have whole week to answer all the different activities that we have here in our module. So, Friday naman yung ating pasahan. Okay? So, for your reference and for further studies, these are the references or materials used in this session or lesson. Okay, so let me let me read this disclaimer. The borrowed materials like songs, videos, pictures, trademarks, and other used materials for education purposes are owned by their copyright holders. So the teacher does not represent nor claim any ownership over them. Okay, so if you want to have your advanced studies, you can check out these different references. Okay, so if you have some questions, please feel free to direct message me on our messenger for questions and clarifications. Okay, so very good, guys, and thank you for watching and listening. Always stay safe and always continue learning. Okay, so be safe, everybody.